Hi, on this podcast, we're going to address some of the misconceptions related to bill referrals in the California Legislature. The first misconception is that only spot bills are prohibited from being referred to a policy committee. Spot bills are not referred to a policy committee in either house of the California Legislature. For example, that's specified in Assembly Rule 51.5 for that House. Also, neither Rules Committee in the Assembly or Senate refers intent bills to a policy committee, except for those dealing with um, the budget themselves. Also, the Senate does not refer bills to committee that calls for a study or a report. The Assembly Rules Committee will refer such measures to committee. The Assembly has always imposed a deadline for amendments to spot or intent bills in order to get those bills referred to policy committee. Historically, the Senate has not had such a rule, but during the COVID pandemic time and thereafter, the Senate also has imposed a deadline for amending spot or intent bills. Another misconception is that the appropriations committees determine whether bills have a fiscal impact and are therefore re-referred to the fiscal committee. However, that is done by the Office of Legislative Counsel pursuant to the Joint Rule 10.5 factors. So it's the attorneys in the Legislative Counsel office that key a bill fiscal without any input from like the Department of Finance, the legislative analyst, or even either of the appropriations committees. Leg Counsel estimates roughly 80 to 85% of the bills introduced are keyed as having a fiscal impact. Another misconception is that only appropriations bills are keyed fiscal. However, a fiscal bill, which is generally deemed to be a measure that contains an appropriation of funds, also includes those that, for example, require a state agency to incur additional expenses. The Legislative Council's designation is at the end of the digest of the Legislative Council's digest under the digest keys. Another misconception is that the effort to concur or not concur is not in order until the Legislative Council digest appears in the daily file. Under Joint Rule 26.5, that is in fact the rule. However, consideration of a bill, even if the digest has not yet been printed, is permissible as long as an analysis of the bill has been prepared and distributed to the members on the floor of the Assembly or Senate. In addition, Joint Rule 26.5 can be suspended by a majority vote of either House's members. Another misconception is that if the Legislative Council digest discloses that an amendment has made a substantial substantive change to a bill after it was passed by its House of Origin, then the bill is required to be referred to the appropriate standing committee in the House of Origin when the bill returns for a concurrence vote. So under Joint Rule 26.5, in the case of a Senate bill amended by the Assembly, it is re-referred to the Senate Rules Committee. In the Assembly, it is referred by the Speaker to an appropriate standing committee. So the two houses use a slightly different process.